Hey guys, this is Ben at Truth Power Sports and Equipment in Emmett, Idaho, and this right here is a Snowdog. Does your Snowdog sound like this whenever you're starting it?
Yeah.
It's just not idling? That usually means that your carburetor is blocked up. This happens quite often after storage. What we're going to do today is we're going to remove the carburetor, we're going to clean it, put it back on, and get this back to idling successfully. So stay tuned. Take the carburetor off the Snowdog. You're going to need a couple of tools. You'll need a 10mm socket, and I'm using mine in a 1/4" drive. You're going to need a 2" extension, an 8mm socket, a 10mm wrench, a pair of hose pliers. I also suggest a pair of needle nose pliers, and you're going to need something to pinch off the gas line so that you do not make a gasoline mess. Guys, we're going to be taking off the cover and the choke lever, and for this you're going to need a 10mm wrench. I've got my special wrench. It's a ratcheting wrench. It's awesome. So let's just make sure we're going the right direction, and we're going to take this off. It's one bolt. Oh, and I guess I did forget to mention you're going to take a spring off as well, and that is right here. Let's get this guy off of here. There we go. All right. Okay. Now, we've got 2 more bolts here, and we'll get that off. All right. This right here is the 8mm, so 8mm and extension. These are always nice to have. It's fine. And 2.
How hard is it to put a starter in that?
It can be challenging. I cannot remember if that particular Bayou has a chain. I'm pretty sure it does have a chain drive. All right, so we're gonna need a 7mm nut driver. We're gonna loosen this up right here. All right. Now, we're gonna take this and slide it out. If this little cap comes off right here, it's to hold these wires together. That's what this little cap is. So you're able to take it and put it back on, and you can crimp it back to the wire when you're done. I do advise that. The next part you're going to want to take out is a little tough. You just pull straight out, and it's this piece right here. Okay? Now, you'll be able to slide this completely out. And we're just going to set this right here. We're going to be careful not to bend that too much. Slide this out. We're going to put this aside. Next, we have our gasket. We have a couple of things here. We got our fuel line. We're going to turn our carburetor off. Should have been off before we started. All right, we'll remove this. Pull that up. Now we're going to take this off. We're going to need our clamps. We're going to need to clamp this. do not want too much fuel to be leaking out. This is also a great time to get those shop towels ready. Now this is a pair of hose pliers, and we're going to use them to hopefully get a grip on our there we go. Not quite the proper method, but my other pliers, which are for this, they don't fit in that little spot. Okay. And then we're going to carefully grip this. There we go. Pull up. I broke our seal. We'll pull this up. There you go. A little bit of fuel's dripping down onto our rag, but we now have our carburetor off. And if this gasket right here is still intact for you, you should be able to reuse it. Now, if it's broken, if it didn't come off very well, you can make one of these. It's not hard. Just trace it onto a piece of cardboard. It cannot be corrugated cardboard. Think like the cereal box cardboard or something like that. You can also get gasket material from your local auto parts store. All right, so we have successfully taken our carburetor off. We're gonna put it on the bench and we're gonna break it down, and we will examine what happened. Why is this thing not working? All right, so here we have the Snowdog carburetor. We got it off the machine over here, and one of the first things we need to do is get the gasoline out of here. We got to get that out. You're going to need a 10mm wrench to do that, and there's a couple ways you can do this. There's actually a vent on this carburetor, so if we wanted to, say, get the gas out without dumping this out, we could put it upside down, and that's the vent. It's one of the miracles of, or engineering miracles, I'll say, of how the fuel stays fresher in these carburetors longer, is the way that this vent works, which we can get into more detail about that later. All right, so 10mm wrench. We'll take off this. This is the drain plug that's provided. It's on the side of the carburetor right here, and this is the plug you would normally use if this machine stayed, or carburetor stayed on the machine. This would be what you use to drain it. And the way that I like to store these, which we'll talk about later, is by actually spraying some WD-40 in there and then using some compressed air to move that around. But nonetheless, all of the fuel is out. Now, let me grab some compressed air real quick. We're gonna blow the carburetor off, and we're going to get the fuel off of the carburetor itself. There we go. All right. Perfect. So this is the carburetor bowl. We're going to take the carburetor bowl, and we're actually doing this to inspect the condition of the internal components of the carburetor, at least the ones that we can see once this bowl is off. Some things you're going to see when you're in here is your float valve, your lever float itself. All right, so very nice, very clean. This is exactly what you want to see. Nothing's built up in it. Very, very clean. I'm going to take out our, this is the there's our floats. All right. Now this gasket right here, and we don't want this to swell, so we're going to get our compressed air and we're going to lightly blow it. I'm going to put air on our main jet. Air through here. Oh, gonna have to turn the gas on for this one, guys, and make sure it's over here. Get gas out. All right. Now I've done this without removing this O-ring, and I would suggest that if it's staying in there, leave it alone. It's fine, especially if it's still raised. Now, if this is flat and you cannot see these ridges on here anymore, you will definitely need to replace this. If you don't, what will end up happening is the fuel will seep on this lip down at the bottom on the inside, and that's going to be as the machine is being used, because the fuel is going to be rattling around inside of it. All right, this one is in really good condition. We're not going to worry about that. So a little bit about how this carburetor works. It has one jet right there. So we're going to take this jet out, but this jet supplies all of the fuel that this carburetor is going to need. Now, this differs from other carburetors in that most carburetors will have two jets in them. One of them is for the idle circuit and the quarter throttle and under circuit, and then you're going to have your main jet that is for everything above that as it transitions. So our blockage, being that this is at idle, is actually happening right in here. So this is a channel. There's a hole inside of here, and you can see where they drilled it and made it, and then they put this little ball bearing in there. This is where the hole location is for here. Now this hole can get obstructed inside the carburetor, and the best way I have found to free it is to use a torch tip cleaning device like this, and to bend it, and to just prod at it and go at it, have lots of carb cleaner, and just keep doing this over and over and over again. This is the hole that whenever people boil their carburetors or put them in a chemical dip or use an ultrasonic cleaner, that they're hoping to clean, because it is inside of there, and that's one of the problems. Now this carburetor doesn't have that problem, and I know it doesn't have that problem because the next part of the carburetor that's actually causing the problem is right here. So inside of here, this is this piece right here, there's going to be another tiny little jet. Now it operates off of here. When this carburetor is pulling up fuel going into this section, it's going to need some air, and that is where this air comes from. So this air, this is how much air that is provided for the idle circuit, and that tube runs through this. Now this right here is the pilot jet inside of this, and it supplies the fuel that is monitored by this screw that is broken on purpose from the factory, that is not adjustable. And when the machine is at idle, which is somewhere around here, very, very little open, there is a mixture of fuel and a very tiny amount of air that's coming out of this hole right here. And as your throttle opens, you're going to see there's more holes. And those holes are very hard to pick up, I'm sure, but there's 4 of them. There's 3, 1, 2, 3 right there. And there's one up here at the very top, kind of in the middle between these two. Now these are transitionary jets. On the opposite side of that is a Welch plug. Inside of this Welch plug is a channel, and that's going to be full of fuel. And so as your machine opens up throttle, those jets right here, these are also permanent jets, have to have fuel coming out of them, or anything that happens between here and here doesn't work. And so the machine is starving for fuel. And when it opens up, the main jet, which is coming out of this emulsion tube right here, works, and then the machine fires up, runs really well. That's whenever your choke is on. But when you take your choke off and it goes to idle, there's no fuel coming out. And that's going to be because of this guy right here. So we're going to go ahead and take this off. Now the best way to do this is we need to count how many turns in we go on this screw until it's seated. So there's a half, a 1, a half, 2, half, 3, half, almost 4. So we're going to call that 3 and, I don't know, 3/4. So 3 3/4. And we're going to take this out. And this is your idle stop screw. So no matter what the governor says needs to happen to your motor, this screw keeps this carburetor from fully shutting. Now this right here is nothing more than just a piece of plastic that's there to hold this up. Put that aside. Now we need to get to this. This is a jet. Now it's got some rubber O-rings on it that you're going to want to examine and possibly replace. You can see we've got some fuel in there, and if you're able to see inside of there, it's dark. This brass, shiny brass piece that's supposed to be just as shiny as that is not. And that darkness is the buildup that's causing all of these problems. Now you can kind of see in here, you can see the hole that's going into the carburetor down there. Now that's going to be where the fuel's coming up. It's going to this jet. That's at the bottom of this. Then we have a through hole right here. And you have an O-ring at the top and an O-ring at the bottom. And that is what allows the air that's coming through here and the fuel to go through another hole on the side of the carburetor right there into all of these right there. All right. Enough of the technical stuff. What about the cleaning? Well, that's going to be back where this torch piece comes in. We're going to grab some carb cleaner. We're going to spray it into each of these holes. Now, a full carburetor teardown will include, which we'll go ahead and do, going ahead of myself, a full teardown and clean is going to include taking this jet out. And we should check it out anyway, just to examine. And one of the big mistakes that I see a lot of people do is they use the incorrect size screwdriver. Now, I kind of made this one. This is a very old screwdriver I've had for a long time. But I ground the sides down and I've ground the ends down so that it fits perfectly in my jets. And I never have a problem with it causing an issue. So if we look, these are very, very good looking. We got no deposits made. We got nothing happening here. Very, very good looking jets. All right. So all of our problems truly do stem from that one little piece, and that's what you're going to find is happening. Now, I love carburetors. That's probably one of the last pieces of freedom that we have on our internal combustion engines, because for all the problems that you have even more problems whenever your fuel injection doesn't work. When it comes to carburetors and it comes to dependability and reliability, if you check and make sure that your machine starts up and runs like it's supposed to, and you maintain it, they give you very little problems. And that's because your engine efficiency doesn't change. And if your engine efficiency doesn't change and your fuel doesn't change, then your carburetor doesn't need to change either. But that's what I love about carburetors. They give you choice and freedom. This one has less choices when it comes to that screw being, you know, it's glued in there and snapped off. But we got workarounds for that here in the shop. And if you ever want to learn about that or buy some of our products that allow you to do that, well, we sure do want you to. All right, so now we're going to take a look and see. Now this is carburetor cleaner, so I'm wearing gloves. I've got safety glasses on. I really recommend high ventilation if you've got it. But we're going to look and see if we can get. We're going to put our straw into this hole right here, and we're going to see if we can get a nice stream of carburetor cleaner to come out all of those holes. Oh, perfect. See how much that is? That's beautiful. That's exactly what you want. So this is essentially cleaned. And it wasn't very dirty to begin with, but it just doesn't take very much to clog this up. We're going to dry this out, some compressed air. I don't think I can stress this enough, but whatever you do, do not get carb cleaner on this piece of rubber or any other solvent. And this includes, you know, gasoline even, because it will swell. And when that happens, it's impossible to use this gasket. And you'll end up having to get a new one. And that can really set you behind. Our carburetor's clean. We're done. But Ben, what about that other one? You haven't fixed that yet. Yep. This is going to be where a new other handy dandy little thing comes in. I found that a little tiny piece of stainless steel wire, which you can get from a wire wheel. Now, not all wire wheel stainless wire is the same. You want the really fine wire. And you're just going to pull this off of your wire wheel, and we're just going to pop that back in there. Now look, all you're trying to do is get it to go through that hole and then we're going to work it around, and then we're going to gently spray some carb cleaner and try not to get it in our face through there. And we're just getting rid of all resistance. And that's it, we're done. Blow that off with some air. Inspect it. And then it's time to put it back together. And that's really it. When you go to put this back together, you can use a little WD-40 or a little amber grease. And I mean very little, a very, very tiny amount. It should be no more than a film. No more than a film. Now this is going to keep your O-rings that are on here, which ours are still in very good condition. And the way to tell if they're still in good condition is that they are round at the edges. If they are square at the edges, they need to be replaced. They have to be replaced. They will be a point where you will be getting air. And if you get air, you're changing your air to fuel mixture, and then this thing still doesn't work. So ours are still round on the faces. We got a little bit of grease on there. That's going to help us to pop that in, and it keeps the gaskets from moving up. Put our spacer on right here, and we got to remember we're going to tighten this all the way up, and then we're going to back it out 3 3/4 turns. All right, so there was our 3/4. So half, 1, half, 2, half, 3. All right. Actually went a little bit too far. I should have been straight up and down. There we go. Assembly is reverse of taking it apart. Just make sure everything's clean. And if you got a little dirty spot on there, we don't want that in our carburetor. We need to clean that off. Get that out of there. All right. Little dirt and debris. Little air compressor. Air. Having a shop and a clean place to work does make this a lot easier. Doing it in your backyard or in a dirty environment, it can cause a lot of frustration, because as you saw how small some of these holes are, and they are very small. It does not take very much to clog this up. And you can find yourself having to do this job again and again if you happen to get some dirt in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and just run this wire through our main jet just to make sure I don't have anything clogging it up, which I don't. Looks very good. Put that in here, making sure not to cross thread. If you come across a lot of resistance, or almost any resistance, something's wrong. Stop what you're doing. You will strip these threads out. And if you've ever had to drill out a jet before, it is a nightmare. Okay, our gaskets here are still in really, really good condition, so we are going to go ahead and reuse them, but there's a very high chance if yours is a older machine that this will need to be replaced. This is a fiber washer. Some of the carburetors that you may have could have aluminum soft metal washer. That has to be replaced every time you take it apart. Now, a lot of people don't replace it every time. It's just one of those things that if you get it done at our shop, we will replace it every time, because we don't want you to have a problem later. Your problem is our problem. Our carburetor is done. It is back together and ready to go back on the machine in reverse order as it was taken apart. All right, so here we go. We're gonna put our gasket back on. Make sure it's facing the correct direction. Carburetor, want to go back on. If I can get that little spring. There we go. All right. Get our throttle linkage put on. Throttle linkage spring. Go ahead and get that fuel line put back on. Now, the other thing to consider whenever you're doing this is to make sure that your fuel line is in good condition. If it's not in good condition, change it now. The way that these things break sometimes isn't from the outside, but the inside. Fuel lines have layers. One of the common things that I see happening to these is an overuse of solvents and as an additive in fuel. And the solvents dissolve the petroleum products that they are in. And rubber is a petroleum product. So when you put a lot of solvent in here, it will eat the fuel line. And that will cause the fuel line internally and eventually working its way to the outside, depending on how damaged it is on the inside, to turn into a rubber goo that does go into your carburetor, and it really clogs everything up. And when that rubber goo gets in here, it is near impossible to clean this carburetor, because all of those internal passageways that I just showed you and some more are going to have that rubber goo on it. And that, like I said, the rubber goo, it's again, it's near impossible. All right, so we got our next piece here. I believe it goes on this way. I actually didn't take, I should have paid more attention. Oh, wrong way. There it is. All right. Get this hose. We're just lining it up. Put that on there. All right, and we got our breather hose. We're going to put this back on. Nice and tight. Have our 10mm. Nuts. I don't have any specific torque for this. I sure could go and look it up. I actually dropped a little nut or a bolt back there. I don't have a specific torque for this. So we're gonna use the old good and tight. This is probably the part where just having that experience of doing something for 30 years comes into play, because tight means other things of different people. My best advice, if you have no idea how tight to make this, would probably be to look up the thread that this is and see the torque specs for the thread itself. Now this is a M6 1.25 pitch thread. And I don't know the rating on the metal, but if I can remember correctly, I think it's like 8 to 10 foot-pounds, but it could be inch-pounds. That's a very big difference. So you're gonna need to look that one up. All right. So now we gotta get our covers back on. Oh, and we need to put that 8mm back in over there. So let's go ahead and do that. There's our 8mm bolt. Pop right back in there. If any of your bolts are not threading in, they're not tight, or it's not going back together as easy as it came apart, you most likely have a misalignment, and you are going to want to examine everything again. Take it back apart if you have to. Take a look, see if something's in backwards, extra space somewhere, anything like that. If you're ever going to have to force something to work, chances are it just didn't put together right. Okay. It's like my choke lever here. Get it to go right back through. There it goes. Nice and easy. And grab our spring mount. You know what's really nice is that when the first snow dogs were out, they didn't have not one of them, unless it was an added feature if you wanted to have a remote choke. Otherwise, you came to the motor, even though it was electric start, and you had to choke it. And then you went right back to the handle and you started it, and then you had to get back from the handles, come back over here and turn the choke off. Man, I'm glad they fixed that. All right. I've got a stray little wire that's popped its way out. So let's see if we can't get that stray wire to go in through the hole. Be editing the crap out of this. I thought I was so careful to not cause this. Don't succeed. Try again. All right. There we go. Perfect. Getting it back on there. Back on track. There it is, our bolt. Our 7mm. We'll hold this down. Torque it good. Next is this little guy. Another possible slowdown on our repair. Trying to get all of those back in. Again, this is just a preference. If it doesn't bother you, you don't got to put it back on. It's your machine. All right. It is now on. Crimp it. There you go. Go ahead and get the rest of our bolts tightened up. And then we're going to turn the gas on and start it and see if it idles. I bet you it will. Choke on real quick. Now I don't have the battery hooked up on this right now, so I'll be pull starting it. I'm going to pull start it. ladies and gentlemen, is the biggest complaint that we see coming in with the Snowdog, if there is a problem, and the biggest complaint we have with just about every other piece of equipment that comes in here. And that's generally that's how we fix it every single time. So I hope this is good information for you, and that you are able to use it and really just enjoy your ownership and the maintenance even of the Snowdog. Would like to also let you know that we are able to offer a delivery service for your carburetor. So if your carburetor needs to be cleaned and needs to be taken care of, and perhaps you don't have the time, or if this doesn't seem like something that's right up your alley, just send it on to us. Give us a call, we'll set you up with a repair order, and we will get this thing fixed. It's a flat rate fee, so it shouldn't be any problems, and we'll talk to you later.